your customers' language that they use in testimonials. There'll be common words that they use and things, ways that you don't talk about yourself, but ways that they talk about you. That's just total gold. You should use it.
Jacob, how are you this week?
Good. Good to be back.
Good. For the second time. Will you reveal?
Yeah, we totally didn't just talk for 20 minutes without recording.
It happens to us all, even 15 years into a creator career. I wonder how many times you have to not hit the record button and then speak for half an hour before you eventually never do it again.
I don't think that ever happens. Yeah. Oh, the pain.
So yes, we have now hit the record button on our current episode, and we're now going to record another episode of the Creator Toolbox.
You'll never get some of those secrets back.
Indeed. All right, let's jump right in. Tools for this week. I've got a couple. You've got one, haven't we? So mind if I go first? Will I jump in?
Go for it.
So the first one I have for this week is it's all around video. So I've been digging deep into, I talked a bit on the first episode of this, didn't I, about Filmora. So I was getting into video editing a bit more, looking back at the tools. I've always been a video editor, but I've always used Adobe Premiere just as the kind of core tool for it, because we've always been a kind of Adobe bunch, an Adobe team. But I started experimenting with other ones. Talked at the time about Adobe's kind of weakness for, I don't know, it's a high learning curve. It doesn't really speed things up. It doesn't help you. The templates are all a bit old-fashioned and poor. So I've been looking at repurposing tools, the new batch of creating clips, AI-powered clipping, all that kind of stuff. Is that something you've played around with much?
Yeah, on the audio side specifically for podcasts. So trying to turn audio into video, but also, I think it's actually almost a little bit more difficult with audio because you don't have any sort of visual reference, and trying to find a clip in it takes ages. Yeah. But yeah, mostly just audio, just podcasts.
Yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to for me. There's a point where I was playing around. I've played with 5 or 6 of them now. There's ones like OmniClip, there's ClipGen, there's Choppity. There's a few really good teams working on this, I think. But I got to the point where I'm uploading stuff. I'm uploading these conversations. So for this episode, I'm uploading some more kind of high fidelity YouTube recordings that I've done, some podcast episodes. And it's good. It's really good in some cases, but I feel like it's getting to 80% of the way there. And I feel like there's only 20% of the work to do. I just need to refine it a little bit. I just need to pick out some of the best ones. But for some reason, somehow, that last 20% is taken easily 80% of the time somehow, and it's flipping. Because it's just, there's so much work to kind of refine them and make them good. So there's something in there, it's just not working yet. And I can't figure out exactly why.
Yeah. Is it, what would you do differently? What would you do differently if you had to go in and fix these tools? What is it in particular that you think could tighten that up?
There's a couple of problems I'm coming across. There's one is it just comes up with a whole bunch of clips which are kind of useless. They're like a random few sentences that I don't know why in any way it would have picked that out. There was one in the last one that I uploaded. It clipped the first 30 seconds of the episode. So it was literally saying, hey, and welcome to the Creator Toolbox. This is what we do on this show. That's not a clip you're going to share on social. Great. It's just not, it's not useful. It's not engaging on its own. So there's that. There's first the filtering and finding the decent ones. Then there's the refining of them. So they'll have maybe a few weird sentences on the start, or so there's just a bit of editing. So that's fine. Takes a little while. But then there's also kind of having to put in some context. Usually it'll pick a 30-second or a minute clip, and it almost makes sense on its own, but it definitely does need some context. So I feel like you need a headline in there or something on screen, or to be able to do a bit more. It's just not quite working for me yet. I have found Omni is the best for that. So the OmniClip tool is probably the best I've found. It's one that makes it really easy to upload, to create that little headline. So you can actually create a little bit of text on the first 5 seconds or for the whole thing, which gives context to a 30-second clip, which is really handy. And it's pretty good at the kind of exporting side. That's the other part, like then downloading all these clips and uploading to them to all the platforms. And that's a whole ball ache as well. So it's like, but Omni is getting there. It's kind of, it can export to some of the platforms. It can export to Shorts. It can export to TikTok, but it doesn't make the scheduling very easy. It doesn't let you do it live in many cases. So I've ended up going to Buffer for that as well. Like Buffer seems better for that part. So all this to say, I've been trying these, and maybe just to share, like I'm sure other creators are playing around with these, and I've still not found like a great way to do it. I think they're going to get there. Maybe the next year they will get to something that does actually automate a lot of this, but I don't know. I think feasibly as well that they never will. I think there's maybe something around this process that does definitely need a fair bit of human review still, and still a fair bit of human editing. But I don't know. What do you think? Is it going to get there?
I think it might. I think it might get there. Like, you think a year ago it wasn't even conceivable that we could have a bit of software that would pick out any clips at all. So I think what they need to do is split it into two tasks. I think they need to focus on one, identifying all the possible clips, and that in of itself would be a big help. Like, go through my 30 minutes of audio and just pull out every possible thing that could stand alone, and don't try and guess whether it's engaging or not, because I think that's a whole different task, and I think that's much more difficult.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, possibly.
And then you've just got to take a list. You go through top to bottom and say these
just work it through. Yeah, totally. Yeah, just filter it yourself. Like, make it easy for you to select them out. Tick yes or no, blah blah blah. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that'd be a really good start actually. So it's more around just giving you all the options. Here. I don't know, actually. I'm not sure, because Omni, for example, brings up the header. So you see a little headline. It creates its own little smart headline title for the clip. And I go, oh, that sounds cool. And then I go in. And it's like a part that has like something around that concept, but it just doesn't give you enough. There's not enough content in there. Maybe I'm not thinking about it right. Like, maybe these clips don't need to have that much content. Maybe I'm thinking of it too much like a teacher. Like, I want to have a start, a finish, and an end, and it actually covers something.
I think I think you do want a bit of context, though. You want at least enough that you need to know what they're talking about, right? You need to know what they're talking about, because the point of the clip usually is you want to pull them into a wider conversation. You want to take them to a full video or to a wider channel or whatever,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think you're right. I think what the thing that these companies are missing, though, is I think they need to be the ones publishing it as well. Because I think that they need to hook up to the analytics on where it's getting posted, so that they can analyze what are the best performing clips, and then they can improve their recommendation of clips and the copy of them and all that kind of stuff. So there's a disconnect there.
Absolutely, yeah. And based on I mean, that's based on your audience, isn't it? That's something that they can learn from, can hopefully adapt to, and see what kind of
across all customers, though. Like, they just need to get a better intuitive understanding of what makes a good clip, so that they can recommend to all customers. Maybe like a 50% better clip than they might recommend just now, and then from that they can personalize on an account basis.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, cool. The next stage I'm finding as well, have you spotted, so in Adobe Premiere, they've now got text-based editing?
No, news to me, but it sounds quite interesting.
It's really cool, actually, because I've always used Premiere, like I said earlier, and just been able to do that kind of rough cut. I'd played around with the script a bit recently as well, like using that for some of the video. Good tool, but it's just kind of, there's something a lot of the people that I've spoken to that use it kind of more commercially end up doing the rough cut in there and then exporting it somewhere else to do the kind of detail editing, which is kind of what I was thinking I might end up doing, because I want to do the cuts between clips and stuff like that, like between faces, and being able to overlay the screencast and stuff like that as well, especially in this one here where we're sharing screencasts and stuff like that. So now I can just do it all in Premiere, which is really cool. And even bringing in another tool that I found recently as well called Autopod. You heard of that one?
No, but I think you're using it for this, aren't you? You mentioned it earlier.
Autopod, yes. So
Yeah.
Autopod is one where, so you're in a platform like this, like we're recording this in StreamYard right now.
Hmm.
It will download. It's a live streaming service, so it records both of our sides. It records your camera locally, my camera locally, audio as well. So it creates a track for each of us, and I can export them into Premiere,
Hmm.
and then I can run Autopod as a plugin inside Premiere. It's a plugin that's literally just like one button. So I'll do the rough cut with my text-based editing, cut it down the content to what I want, and then I hit go on Autopod, and it then clips it. It actually just does edits. You can see them appear in front of your eyes, where when I'm speaking, my face is full on screen. When you're speaking, your face is full on screen. And it goes through the whole episode like that. So you get that really nice, engaging, flipping back and forth, right face on screen, and there's a bit more visual interest as you're watching
Yeah.
through. So it's really
That's
cool.
really, really cool. Yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
so? I always get a bit wary, right, when I
Yep.
hear all these tools getting added. So, would you say that you're saving time or increasing quality? Are you doing more or are you doing less?
Well, so the point of my last 2 or 3 weeks playing around with this was to aim to do less. It
Mm.
was to aim to find a process which is a balance between creating something that's a bit more polished. So it's not just our two faces side by side on screen, published straight to YouTube.
Yeah.
I want to cut down the content a bit. I want to trim some of the fat because I think I think you can do that quickly with text-based editing. We're discovering that with Alitu. Like since we added text-based editing to Alitu as well, so many people are using it to just trim the fat a bit and only spend 5 or 10 minutes skimming through the transcript and cutting out a few bits that they're like, well, do you know, I went off on a tangent here for a couple of minutes. It's not really necessary. I can make this more, more potent, this content, because I can take out a bit of that fat. I want to do that with episodes like this. And with my main YouTube content as well. Like we weren't doing that when we were doing YouTube last year. We were kind of polishing it up a little bit and putting some visual effects and stuff like that, but we really weren't doing much in cutting a 20-minute video down to 15 or even 10 to just make it more snappy and take out those little extra bits. So I want to do more of that. And I think you can do that fast. I think you can do that in 5, 10, 15 minutes with text-based editing. And again, we're seeing that anality with people doing that with their podcasts. So that's one part. And the other part is I think there is like real value in the clipping. I think there is real value in having those 30 second, 1 minute, 2 or 3 minute even clips that we put out there, which are little how-tos that are much more focused on one little thing, particularly on, like, you were telling me this, and I'm hearing more and more about it, about, like, you search for a lot of your how-to on TikTok now, don't you?
I
Or
personally
is that
don't.
not you? You
Yeah,
don't,
not
it was
me.
something
But I
you were
know,
telling me. Yeah.
like, I know a lot of people do. So, I've got friends that do. My partner Sophie does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, being able to put out from a 20-minute clip, being able to put out like 3, 4, 5 sections of that are little self-contained, how to do this really specific thing. I think there's a lot of value in that. And if we can find a tool, an AI-based tool that helps make that fast, I think there's a whole lot of value in that. So that's the idea, is to find a process and not go too overboard, because I don't want to make it unsustainable. I don't want to make it take too long. And then once I've figured it out, to kind of get somebody to help us do it on an irregular basis and not spend too much time on it. Yeah, that's the idea.
It's just like each of these tools really is like a little quality lever that is not going to be fully time consuming.
Hopefully not going to add a lot. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think it's to help us do something like that. Content edit in the olden days would have had to go and I did that. I did that content edit on many podcasts over the years. There was one in particular I did called UK Business Startup, where we did all the interviews, we got them all transcribed. I had them literally printed out on paper with the time codes, and we'd like score out paragraphs and then have to go back into Audition, find those time codes, find the exact point, highlight it, edit it, ripple delete, blah. It's just a different world. But it's the exact same result. That's what you're aiming to do. So it's weird. So that's the idea.
That's
where I'm at just now. So it's Premiere for the text-based editing. StreamYard for recording those kind of separate tracks, OmniClip for doing a bit of that clipping, Autopod to do a bit of that kind of auto polish within Premiere itself, and in publishing a bit with Buffer, actually, because it's probably the best I've found for actually being able to schedule to a few different social platforms at once.
It's nice and clean. It just works. I love Buffer. Yeah, good team as well.
Always has. Cool. All right. What about yourself?
So
what are you looking at this week?
I've been thinking and doing a little bit in the world of social proof. So if you're create a business, if you sell a product, an info product, maybe like an ebook, courses, maybe it's a subscription to like a community or software like us.
Oh yeah.
Part of every landing page, every sales pitch, you need to have some feedback from other customers in there, hopefully happy customers. So we have reviews, people talking about us on a bunch of different places. We've got some on Twitter, we found some on Reddit, we've got a load on Trustpilot, we've got people who have come directly to us, who've written case studies with us. We have some people who've sent us video testimonials. So we have all of this great feedback, but we didn't really have a good way to put it all in one place. And no good central place to collect it either. So I came across these guys on Twitter, Ollie Meekings and Wilson. I think his name is Wilson. His Twitter handle's EU Boyd. So you message him and fact check that. I know. It's fantastic. And I might talk a little bit more about these in our Creators of the Week segment, but really good guys, and they're building this fantastic tool. And essentially what it does is it will connect and sync with places like Trustpilot, but you can also then go and import tweets from Twitter or Reddit comments or posts from Reddit. And so those are just the ones that we've used, so I'm being very self-centered here, but they have like a list of like 20, 30 different places that you can import it from. So for bigger companies, they've got like G2 reviews for like big software companies all the way down to I think you can import like Apple Podcast reviews and stuff like that. So even if you're not selling a product and you have a podcast and you just want a really good way to show people you want a really good way to show people what people are saying about the content that you're creating, you can import that stuff all there. And even if you don't have any testimonials or reviews that are being collected anywhere in particular right now, because like for a business like us, Trustpilot's a place where people already go, but like if you're a creator business, there's not really, it might be like YouTube comments or something like that, but maybe you want a way to incentivize people. Maybe you want to give people a place to go to leave you feedback. So you can actually set up a form with Senja where people will be asked questions that you specify. They can even record a video in there and send it in. So you can actually see in the video here, you can see all the different places that you can pull in from.
Yeah, so many.
Yeah,
Facebook,
it's great.
LinkedIn, App Store, Slack. There you go. Yeah. But it does have Apple Podcasts.
It does, yeah.
That's really very cool.
Yeah.
So you could include. We use. This is we're doing it for software for Alitu, but imagine doing this for a creator business where it's more a wall of love for your podcast, for your YouTube channel, for whatever.
Yeah,
that's really good.
One of the things that we created this week is our wall of love, and that pulls together all of the reviews into one place. But you can also export really nice social images. You can, I think they're working on video at the moment as well. There's just all different ways that you can use these testimonials. It's fantastic. I really love the tool. One little cool thing is that they will look at all of your testimonials together and it will generate bits of copy for you just based on sort of common denominator between all the testimonials. I thought that was really, really clever. And it was nice to get some copy.
That's what you're supposed to do, isn't it? You're supposed to go through all of your customer feedback, like find the language, find the words they use, like reflect back their problems, their feelings, their benefits. But you never do it because it takes bloody ages.
I do. I have. And I was quite happy to find that a lot of the copy was quite familiar, it came back with.
Good.
Yeah. No, and that's a really good thing to do, no matter what you're doing. One little tip, do use your customers' language that they use in testimonials. There'll be common words that they use and ways that you don't talk about yourself, but ways that they talk about you. That's just total gold. You should use it. No matter what you're doing.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, we need to use that more. I'm going to put together one of those for Podcraft, see what it looks like.
Yeah,
because we've got loads of reviews for that, loads of feedback. So I'm going to see what that looks like for a podcast. Could do an article on that actually.
That'd be cool.
All right. Okay. Cool. Do it for Senja.
I think so.
Nice. Just one other littler one for me. I'm thinking, because it's end of year, I'm thinking about annual planning, goal setting, all that kind of stuff. What's your experience with that? Have you done that as an individual in the past?
I have been known to grab an A5 bit of paper and write down like quite a long list of aspirations. And then normally what
Yeah.
happens is I forget about half of them and I focus on about a quarter of them, and then a quarter
Yeah.
again of them actually happen. Yeah. So I do, but like I'm never quite sure why I'm doing it. Is it because it feels nice to do it and plan it, or is it because it's worth doing it for the small amount that actually happens? And I feel like that's my hunch. I'm going to tell myself that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's worth doing it
Yeah.
just for those things that you do focus on.
Oh, I love that. That's the total. It's a real nice sum up of the problems with annual planning and goal
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah.
The fact that most people spend a day or two doing this and feel great about it. It's such a fun thing. It's such an inspiring thing to do. And end of December, start of January, and they go in a drawer, and then they come out again the next December, January, and you're like, oh yeah, I set those goals, didn't I? Did I do any of them? No, I didn't. It's something that I discovered, or I started doing about 2015, 16 potentially. And I had a couple of years of that. I had maybe 2 years of that. But I found, I think I got lucky, as in I ended up on an accelerator, this kind of mentoring program for a year at one stage in our business. And I got exposed to a whole bunch of people I was a creator business, but I got exposed to a whole bunch of people in corporate, in like traditional project management, like all these people that had spent 20, 30 years running massive businesses. And I was initially, the first few months, I was like, oh, this means nothing to me. This is not relevant to the kind of business I run. I don't want to run a business that, has multi-million pound projects and 20 people running every project, and like 1,000 people running the kind of larger idea, all this kind of stuff. But it was absolute nonsense. Like 6 months in, I was realizing like so many of these tactics could be applied to a tiny business, like even just one person. I used it as just one person. I used a lot of it just as one person. Then as we started to grow to 2, 3 people, I kind of applied it to our team. And nowadays we still do a whole bunch of those things, even as a small kind of fast, agile creator business or SaaS business. So I'm looking back at this. It took like 3, 4 years to get to the system that I had. And I ended up putting together a course on it because I did a talk at an event back in 2017, 2018, something like that. So I'm just kind of thinking through that at the moment and thinking about that process. So I thought it was worth just sharing a couple of bits of it.
Yeah.
Certainly. And the kind of the main thing that I found was that whole thing around annual planning, because there's a whole framework that you can build here that I kind of put together, because there was a lack of link between annual planning, those goals you put together, and the actual day-to-day work. That was the trouble. Like, you make these goals, you stick them in the drawer, and you think, right, I'm going to start doing something for one of them. But then you get into it, you start doing something, but then you kind of get drawn off, and you end up never really looking back at those goals. Even when you do, it kind of spurs you to maybe do one thing related to them. And then you kind of go off on a different track again. So there was something about, I found you had to start to build linkages from the annual to the monthly. It's the next level down. So there's like annual goals, which is the inspiration. Then you've got the monthly strategy, which actually starts to translate those goals into real actions. So the monthly strategy, but then that turns into the real day-to-day grind, which is your weekly plan. And the weekly plan is where it, lives or dies, because that's what turns it into really what you're doing every single week. And then from there, you've got your daily tasks. And the key thing I found in the end was this routine of looking back up each stage at certain points of the year. So every month I would look back at the annual plan and plan the next month based on that. And every week I would look back at the monthly plan and plan the next week based on that. And every day I'd look back at the weekly plan and do that. So you're always on a certain routine looking back at one level.
Yeah.
And everything, that's what I found was actually what makes you make progress in the same direction every single day, as opposed to, doing something that feels useful but is actually taking you that direction. And then you do something useful the next day, but it's actually taking you that direction. And at the end of the year, you've kind of gone in a circle. You've done a lot of little things that never took you in any one particular way, and never really kind of got you to where you want to go. So there's something around that framework. Yeah.
It's like a big fruit bowl where the thing that you want to achieve in a year, all right, is a big apple in the middle. And every month you have to keep going back at it. And the whole point is you want to keep taking bites out of the apple because you want to be done with the apple by the end of the year. That is what you want to achieve. But it's really easy to get distracted by all the other tasty fruit around you. And it can feel good, and it feels... Yeah, exactly. And it feels like you're moving the needle, but actually you look back at the end of the year and you've got a bite out of an apple and a semi-eaten pear and all the rest of it. And it just, I don't know. Yeah, it's goals are weird over long periods of time. You do. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. You have to make sure that you look back at the big thing, because it's so easy to lie to yourself and trick yourself into thinking that you're not following the path that you set out for yourself. But it's okay because I'm doing all these other things that are also all very good, but it doesn't contribute to the greater vision, the greater goal. So really important.
Absolutely, totally agree. And there's something really important about the reflection part as well. Like, a lot of us sit down and we do our goal setting and we don't really think about what happened last time around. But there's a lot of good creators talk about this. Like, I've taken quite a lot from loads of different people on this. Like, I do a part of my goal setting at the start of the year is I sit down for a day and do a reflect, look back at the last year and really spend a lot of time on it. And I find this really interesting and fun actually as well, because you look back and you see, well, where did I go wrong? Where did I do well? And there's some really good questions you can apply to this, like just simply, what worked last year? What didn't work last year? One I got from Tim Ferriss was the 80-20 on your feelings. Like, what 80% of activities gave me what 20% of my activities gave me 80% of my negative feelings. There's always a small section of things that you do that give you the most negative things that you can maybe cut out. And what 20% of things that I do, things that you don't even spend that much time on, give you 80% of your good feelings. Like, maybe that helps you rebalance your work a little bit more too. What themes keep coming up? I love that one actually. Just like really spending an hour or two looking back, looking at your calendar, looking at your journal, looking at your task management system to see what you were doing and when, and really thinking about what themes kept coming up. What things did I talk about a lot during the last year that I need to actually think about really fixing this coming year? I think that's really important as well. So so anyway, it was just to share that kind of thinking, that framework, and really maybe resetting people. We've got a blog post on this, so I wrote something on this on the podcast host if anyone wants more detail around a bit more around that framework, something you can put into action. So I'll stick a link in the YouTube video here, but I'll put one in the show notes too if you're listening on the podcast, so you can go and have a look at that article. Cool. I hope that's helpful. And we've got a course actually, so if you want to check out that course, go over to thepodcasthost.com/boss and you'll find that. All righty. What about creators of the week, Jacob? Who have you been looking at this week?
Well, I was I think I was going to talk about someone else, but I haven't talked about Senja. I kind of want to talk about these guys. So it's two guys, Ollie Meekings and Wilson, to be confirmed Wilson. And so there's a lot of people who do the whole building in public thing, especially in software. I think it's probably less so in wider creative businesses, but there probably should be more of it. But it's really typical in software, or not, but many people do it. And it's usually the same sort of formula. People will share revenue graphs. This is how much money I'm making, and this is what we're doing. But I wanted to bring up these guys because actually recently they did something really unusual in that kind of space, and that is they were actually honest. So they always got the picture that it was, I don't know, sunshines and rainbows, and everything that they're doing was working, and they maybe had like particular stresses or things that they were working on. Like they would go into detail on like, these are the things that we're working on this week, So together, Ollie's the marketing guy, Wilson was the developer, and they were both going to have a marketing week, and they would kind of go into detail on like, this is what Wilson was doing, and this is maybe how he found it, and this is what was difficult, this is what we felt worked, what we didn't. So that's all like typical stuff. But a couple of weeks ago, they both put out individual posts about how they were like very nearly about to completely shut down everything. You might be
Oh,
able to find
really?
it. Yeah. So they felt that their partnership had fallen apart. They felt that they were no longer going to be able to continue. Now, I think when you're this is something that happens to a lot of people who decide to start a business with someone else. It
Hmm.
might just
Hmm.
not work out personally between them. And I think essentially what they did was they gave themselves some counselling. Kind of said
Yeah.
we're gonna stay off Twitter for a while and we're gonna come
Uh-huh.
back. And I was just really impressed with how they went from sharing all of this like just total success to being really really honest and saying actually this is what's happening. It's not going so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
It's not going
Yeah.
so well at all. And in a way, it was great content.
Yeah. I
So in
bet.
that sense, it's really good to be that honest from just that sort of militant.
Yeah.
People are going to follow you for being honest, and that's
Yeah.
obviously good for any future endeavors, even if this one doesn't work out. But yeah, no, I think they impressed me a lot. I already really really liked them. I just got really good
Yeah.
vibes off them, but I was very impressed with the way that they handled that and how honest they were.
That's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. I mean,
they're both worth a
that
follow.
that takes a bit of bravery, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Huh, interesting. What can you learn from that then? Like, what would you change? What would you do about, like, I mean, I've thought about this a lot. Like, we should be
Yeah,
building more in public. Like, we should be showing more of our designs in action. We should be showing a bit
yeah.
more of what we're working on. How do you balance that with competitive intelligence, essentially? Like,
I I don't know. Like, how often is like so? Let's say like our like okay. So for us, let's relate this to us. So our competitors are, for the most part, all pretty well funded. They've got
yep.
bigger teams in it than like we are for the most part,
Yeah.
the underdog. How
Yeah.
often are they going to see something that we're working on and
Yeah.
like
And change track.
change yeah, exactly, change the course of millions of dollars of funding? I just don't
Hmm.
know. I actually like
Hmm.
they're probably beholden to investors on completing a
Hmm.
particular timeline. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've always thought about it as well. Like, I'd love to
Yeah.
just it would be weird for us to start doing it now because we're not like a early stage startup or something like that, but there's probably something unique in there and of itself that like we're here. This is what we feel is going right. This is what we feel we're struggling with.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to try
I
and
think
do.
I
Yeah,
think we could. I would love to share more of our designs in action, like seeing the stuff that Peter, our UX designer, works on and sends to us, like little, excuse me, little prototypes,
yeah,
little ideas, little snippets of interface
mhm,
ideas that we could do to change Altitude. I think that'd be so interesting to our users. Would it?
yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't. That's
Maybe.
absolutely
Well, we kind of
maybe.
do that for our users, but I think if we're looking at what Ollie and Wilson did, I think it's
Mhm.
about being honest about what's like. It's all fine and well. Like, yeah, they were doing the same thing, and that I think their characters what kind of drew me to them. They were both just like really
Yeah,
honest and
yeah,
seemed like really kind people.
yeah, yeah.
And they were
So
doing the same thing that they all do, was just sharing what they're working on. But I think
yeah.
what was different about that is that they weren't too afraid to share what was potentially catastrophic as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it is less about the detail of the work potentially, and more. It's more the backstory, isn't it? More the
Yeah,
transparency, more the feelings, the emotions,
yeah.
the
People love
drama.
a soap
Yeah, like you
opera.
said. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's about people, isn't it? Like the people probably don't care about a new button in Alitu, but they maybe care who Peter is that actually drew that button.
Yeah,
What he's doing this week or
yeah,
something like that.
exactly. They care about the argument that led up to that button and how we
Yeah,
were going to
yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. The fact that you hated that button and he liked it, and it was like yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I like that. That's good. Cool. Okay. All
coming
right.
to
Anything
you,
else on
out
them?
through the soap opera.
Yeah, indeed. There's
No, that was it. I think I have something to add on to
a
yours
lot.
question.
There's a lot to be learned from that. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So you had this written down as well. I have been really enjoying over the last week the On Musk podcast. And I know Musk is a polarizing guy. So many things that are just mental about how he's acted over the last couple of years, whatever. But the biography came out from Isaacson, the famous biographer. What's his first name again? I've even forgot. Walter Isaacson, isn't it? Put out Musk. And they created a really interesting kind of format of a podcast, which is really just a short series, 4 episodes, really high polish, has just come out. And it's a guy interviewing Walter Isaacson about the book. And it's been polished up into a kind of really highly produced, narrated, a bit of music in there, good production values, all this kind of stuff. And it's just a really interesting story. Just 4 episodes have gone out there, loads of sponsorship in there because it's the only way you can make a short form series like this work, of course. Yeah. But I like that format, and it's been a really cool way to see that. It's been really cool to see them repurpose almost a book into this kind of format and give away a lot of it. It makes me wonder, like, whether there was any argument from Walter about it as well, because there's a lot in there. Anyway, yeah, what were you going to say about it as well? Are you enjoying it?
No, I haven't seen that. I had no idea. I thought I had looked at our notes and I thought you were just going to talk about Musk's biography and about Isaacson, but I have no idea about this. This sounds great. So tell me more. Is it a series, a video, a bigger thing that they've repurposed into a podcast?
No, so well, do you know what? I'm not even sure. So it's definitely a podcast. That's how I've been listening to it. I just came across it in my podcast player, Pocket Casts. It just came up as one of the kind of featured things. So no doubt the guys that made it, who did make it again? On Musk podcast. So no doubt the network that made it have like paid for advertising and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it's popped up. So, but yeah, it might be on video. But I can't see it on video anywhere. I'm just having a quick skim through. It feels like it's just an audio version. Yeah. It's just a podcast series, yeah.
iHeart Podcasts probably is. Yeah.
Is that who it is?
Kaleidoscope. Yeah.
Ah, cool. Yeah, iHeart put a lot of stuff there. So it'll be iHeart are pushing it then because they're the network.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just thought it was a really cool thing. And there was something around Isaacson himself, like Walter Isaacson. Like, have you read a lot of his stuff? As a creator?
Yeah, his I know absolutely nothing about him, but his Steve Jobs biography was my absolute Bible as a teenager. Really? I read that thing cover to cover like 10 times. It fell apart.
Yeah, there was a few things that came out of this podcast series that really applies to any creator, I think. Like, one of his best quotes there was around the fact that he got told once in his life, one of the kind of biggest changers in his life was that he got told, no one wants to hear a preacher, you always want to hear a storyteller. Yeah. So it's like, it works for everyone, doesn't it? Whether you're a teacher, you tell a story and somebody remembers it better. If you're creating a podcast, YouTube, you don't preach to people, you tell them a story and it gets that across so much more effectively. And that totally resonates with his biographies, doesn't it? Like, the biographies I enjoy are, they're told as if it's the person speaking. They're either first person, like the Nike one. I love that, one of my favorite biographies, because it's written first person, even though it's not written by him, obviously. Yeah. Isaacson writes them from a second person, as in it's him, like watching, basically. Yeah. But it's still him telling the story of him being there with Musk for 2 years. Like, he spent 2 years with him. It's absolutely mental.
Yeah.
Like, just in all the boardrooms and all that kind of stuff. So being able to tell that story is so powerful. Yeah. It's cool. I love that. Yeah. All right. Anyway, that's my creator of the week, Walter Isaacson. I don't know if many of us can afford the time to spend 2 years with a person just to write a book about it, but it's there.
Yeah, that'd be something. I don't know. There's something in that though, like getting so immersed into what you're doing. So I think you can do that with pretty much anything, right? But yeah, I think that's a cool format for the content as well.
Yeah. What was it you liked so much about Jobs one?
It's the exact same format as the Musk one. So he spent 2-3 years with Jobs, as he was more or less on his last legs. And I'm only halfway through the Musk one, so I don't know how it ends. But it's the same. It's the same sort of format. I don't know what it is about the writing, but it is. It wasn't. In the Musk one, I've got the same feeling that it's not completely pandering to them. It's not painting him as the best person in the world. It's been very honest about, about the flaws, very honest about the brilliance. And I think people like Musk and people like Jobs, I think Jobs got a much easier time after he died. I think that when he was alive, he was much more of a disputed character. But I think these people, like the Jobs and the Musks, I think they're the only reason that they have the brilliance is because they have the whatever it is
The
that makes
demons as well.
them difficult to
Yeah.
deal with on a sort of regular basis. Yeah. But it doesn't take away from the brilliance.
Yeah, it's hard. Hard. There's so many of them. There's so many of the biographies you read of the top, world changers, that there is huge sacrifice that goes along with it.
Yeah.
So it's like whether you're willing to put up with that sacrifice to make the change in the world that you want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tim Ferriss talks a lot about this. He has much more recently too around the fact that so many of us as creators, what we're doing is we're trying to become more famous. That's a big part of it. Whether it's ego driven, because you want to be known, whether it's for a purpose, like you actually want to become famous enough to be able to promote, a cause or a company or whatever the purpose is. You're trying to become a bit famous. You're trying to grow an audience, and he often talks about the real massive downsides to that, like when you're well known, all the horrible things that can happen. And it's kind of crazy to think about that, like that balance that you have to end up, that sacrifice. I suppose that's just one of the sacrifices in itself, like giving up your privacy in many ways, and putting yourself at more risk, which is scary. But yeah, all right. That's it then for Tools of the Week, Creators of the Week. Hope that was helpful to you out there. Gave you some tips, gave you some things to go and have a check out, some learnings. As always, let us know what you think of them. Any of your own tips, if you have any tools or any Creators of the Week out there, pop them onto Twitter. Probably one of the best for us, X Twitter. Go over to the podcast host. You'll get them through to us there. Jacob, what did we make this week? What are you working on?
Oh, I'm going to go back to social proof because I think it's quite relevant. So, really nice, tiny. This is the result of like a 30-minute conversation, and it just worked. Well, kind of not. It was like an overnight success because of all of the work that we'd actually done before. So we kind of discovered this is something that worked. So, when was it? End of last year, start of this year, we were trying to build out our understanding of the different types of people who use Alitu, our software. So we wanted to get to interviews. Now, it's actually really tough to get people just to agree to sit down for like a 30-minute conversation with you to talk about a product that they pay for. So, yeah, at the time, and I knew that going into it. So what we did at the time was we created a bit of a funnel. And I think this is applicable to everyone that has a creator business who wants to build up to, like you see podcasts and that have ads for themselves, that have people talking about the podcast and what they like about the podcast and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, how do you even get there? And the answer is through many smaller touch points. So what we did was we ran a single question survey to people in the app. Now, for you, that might look like, so if you've got a blog or if you've got a podcast, that might look like a single comment, some small single interaction where they provide an answer to a question. And it might be input on a post, it might be input on an episode, it might be, might look like many different things. But for us, it was an NPS survey. They gave us an answer to that and they let us know how happy they were with us, basically. And then from there, it was actually a really simple ask to get them to write a review for us. So if they gave us a score of a certain amount or more, then we would say, would you mind turning this great bit of feedback into a review? It'll only take 2 minutes. And that's fine. They've already taken that little bit of moment to give you that. And actually, it's only 2 minutes. So, yeah, one, we know that they're happy and that they're going to be able to give us the sort of feedback that we might want to publish. And yeah, so that was easy enough. And then from a review to get to a video testimonial was actually surprisingly easy. Now, it wasn't a huge percentage of people that converted onto that, but say 100 people answered the first survey. About 50 people wrote a review for us, which was great. And then about 10 people from those gave us a video testimonial. So
seems quite good.
It was actually pretty good conversion. We didn't expect to. We didn't really expect to get any video testimonials out of it at all. Now we got 10. 5 of them were lovely and from the heart, but simply not usable for various reasons. That the audio quality was not good enough, or the video wasn't good enough. So there's that to keep in mind as well. But it works. So you can build up to really, really good and bombastic and easily public feedback, but it's just little bit by little bit by little bit. I just wanted to share that. We're really pleased with how it worked out. So we've now converted that into a funnel now today. We've got that running as a fully automated thing, partly used in Senja as well, which is why I wanted to bring it up. Yeah, so that's how we'll collect the video testimonials and any testimonials that get written on elsewhere, like on Trustpilot, because that's a publicly searchable place that will get pulled into Senja for us. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's really good. It's really cool to sketch that funnel out, make it visible, because it's something I think you're right can apply to anything. Like we're applying it to a product there. Software could apply to a course. It could definitely apply to courses or like information products. But like we said earlier, looks like you can use Senja really well for just a podcast or a YouTube channel or something like that. So getting that interaction, it's just so much better to promote that than your latest episode. But here's a person who's a listener, an average person who says my thing is really cool. It's so much more effective. Cool. Great. Okay. Good stuff. For me, last week, like I said, was mostly that kind of repurposing of video. I suppose the only thing to add to that was the format I was trying out, which was I did a video around 14 ways. It was a listicle in video format, 14 ways to grow your podcast audience with collaborations. And my intent was to make them all nice and short and snappy so that they were only 1 or 2 minutes each. And so I could have that kind of 20-minute, significant, chunky bit of video on YouTube as the main thing, potentially even repurpose it to publish to our podcast feed. I'm actually going to do that as well, put it on Podcraft. But it turns into 14 shorter videos that I can put on shorts, on TikTok, on various different places as well. And like I said, all of those are individual little how-tos. So the overall is 14 ways as a how-to on how to grow your podcast through collaborations. But one of those is how to grow your podcast through, episode swaps. That's a 1 or 2 minute, just significant little how-to. So that was my kind of thinking around how I was going to put it together and that repurposing side of things. So that was a big part of my last week. And this coming week, what I'm planning to play more with is story, actually, really inspired by that Walter Isaacson stuff, is this week's pointers. So we run a podcast newsletter called Podcast Pointers. Grab it over at thepodcasthost.com. Got to the header and you'll find it up there in the menu. And the last couple of weeks, and especially from now on, because of this stuff I've been listening to from Walter Isaacson, I just want to put much more in the way of story in there. Less of it still needs to have the how-to, so maybe not less of the how-to, but more of the context backed up by story. Like I'm telling you how to, the most recent one this week, for example, was related to that collaboration stuff. And I told us, I started with a story around how one of my biggest audience growth tactics came around entirely by accident, because I stumbled into this episode swap with somebody and I told the story around how that came about and then said, if you want to do this, here's a few steps you can take. So that's what I'm playing around with at the moment, is tying that more into podcast pointers, into all of our emails, into our funnels, that kind of stuff. So that's about it for me. Nice. You've seen people that do that well? Like I've come across that a lot over the last few years, but I was struggling to think of some examples to look up. You got any?
Yeah, it's something that's really typical in email. It's really typical in email because it is such a tough battleground in there to get people's attentions and be unique. So you've got bigger newsletters like Morning Brew. I think they do a good job of not just being like, they have a good combination of here's just some things to go and read right now, and they kind of put them at the top, and then that's quite accessible, and like if you don't have the time to read down, then all good. But there are good stories in there as well. Stories that you can read right there in the email, stories that you can click through and read. I think I don't know. I think you have to have both. I think you do. I think you have to give people a really easy, just go and get a thing right now. Like, here's a solution to a problem that you might have, or here's something, a long form bit of content that you might be able to go and read over a coffee or whatever. But yeah, I think what can set them apart a lot is having personal experiences and stuff in there. From an individual, though, I don't know. Jeremy Enns in our industry, he does a really good job of that, actually.
He does. He's a good writer.
Yeah.
I think it is a funny balance, isn't it? I want to try that. I want to test it. As in, we have, so people sign up for podcast pointers. We get 20 or 30 people, lucky enough for that many people to sign up every day to our newsletter. So we can test things quite easily. So I want to write a series that welcomes, we've got a welcome series just now, but I want to change it to add much more story, but then create 2 versions of it, one of which has the story and then the how-to, and one of which just has straight into the how-to. And I want to run them side by side and throw like half of our subscribers through one of them and half through the other and see which one engages better, just to actually test that out.
Yeah,
so
it's interesting.
Straight up A/B testing just to see which one works. So yeah, I'll come back and we could report back on that once I've done it.
I like it.
All right.
Nice.
I think that does it for this week, especially since we've recorded half of this episode twice.
Definitely better the second time, so you'll love
it. Good. Cool. All right. Thanks, Jacob. It was good fun. Thank you, listener, for following us through. I hope this has been useful to you so far. Please do give us some feedback. We'd love to know what you like about this format, what you like about this show, what you don't. Go over to X and go to The Podcast Host. Just search us at The Podcast Host on there and drop us a comment. We'd love to know. All right. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.